For this upcoming election, there are going to be 10 statewide amendments and 2 local amendments. And when I've gone out in the community and I've gone out to neighborhood associations to encourage people to vote, that's one of the main things they want to know about the constitutional amendments. And so I'm going to go through all 10 of those as well as the 2 local amendments for you this evening. Well, Amendment 1 that you'll find on the ballot will be a change to Section 16 of the Constitution, and will change the offenses to one who's entitled to bail. And if Amendment 1 would add that those people who were charged with one of these crimes would not be eligible for bail, meaning that they would have to stay in jail until the date of trial. And those were anyone who was charged with murder other than capital murder, kidnapping, rape, sodomy, domestic violence, human trafficking, burglary, arson, robbery, all in the first degree, as well as aggravated child abuse, sexual torture, and terrorism. And this amendment was in response to Anila Blanchard, who was killed in Lee County by someone who was kidnapped and murdered by someone who was out on bail for other serious charges. And this is to go ahead and add a list of very serious offenses to those who would be ineligible or not able to bail themselves out and have to stay in jail until their date of trial. Now, Amendment 2 would authorize city and county governments to use public funds to grant those to private companies in order to expand broadband access or internet access in their cities and towns. As you know, that due to COVID, with the COVID money as well as with the American Recovery Funds, then expanding access to broadband is something that cities and towns and counties are looking at doing. And so this amendment would go ahead and permit them to pay those funds to private companies to expand internet access for their citizens. Amendment 3 concerns the power of the Alabama governor to commute a death sentence to life in prison. And this is in response to a move by former Governor Fob James in 1999 when he commuted a death sentence to life without notifying the victim's family. And so this amendment will require that anytime the governor wants to commute a death sentence to life, that he would first have to notify the victim's family as well as the Attorney General of his decision. Amendment 4 would prohibit the Alabama legislature from changing election laws near the date of election. And so if this amendment passes, then any change to an election law in Alabama would have to be made at least 6 months prior to the date of the election. Amendment 5 affects the probate court, and it seeks to remove the language of orphans court from the Constitution. Now, one of the original duties of the probate court was an orphans court. But currently in Alabama, there is no such thing as orphans law or an orphans court. And many of those things that dealt with providing for minors or those who are unable to make decisions for themselves have been covered by other code sections. So this is just a move to remove unnecessary language from the Alabama Constitution. Amendment 6 would allow cities and towns to collect a specialty property tax to pay bonds or other debt service on capital improvements, and to also use those tax dollars to directly pay for capital improvements on a pay-as-you-go basis instead of issuing debt. So this will allow cities and towns to levy a special property tax to pay for capital improvements in lieu of having to issue bonds or debt to pay for those improvements. Amendment 7 would clarify the authority of cities and towns and counties to use public funds for economic development purposes. That in 2004, there was an amendment that was passed to the Constitution 774, which allowed counties to spend public money to support economic development. But there were also a number of other counties that had passed local amendments, and there's been a legal dispute whether or not those local amendments serve the same effect as that Amendment 774. So this will go ahead and clarify that and allow cities and towns to use public funds for economic development purposes. Now, Amendment 8 is an amendment that applies only to Shelby County, and it would put all privately owned sewage systems under the regulation of the Alabama Public Service Commission. Amendment 9 is similar to Amendment 8, and it pertains to the privately owned sewage systems in Lakeview, and Tuscaloosa, and Jefferson counties, and it would put those privately owned sewer systems under the regulation of the Alabama Public Service Commission. And Amendment 10 is an amendment to the recompiled Alabama Constitution of 2022, which just says that any future amendments to the Constitution will be placed in the recompiled section of the Alabama Constitution. They're also on the ballot, you'll find two local amendments. The First Amendment pertains to my office, the probate court, and it would, one, require that any probate judge here in Montgomery County would have to be a licensed attorney. Currently in Alabama, the probate judge is not required to be an attorney. And so this amendment would join Jefferson and Mobile counties that have a similar amendment requiring their probate judges to be a licensed attorney. There's a similar amendment in Walker County that will also be on the ballot this Tuesday. And by local legislation, there are another 10 counties that have a local bill requiring that their probate judge be an attorney. But this amendment also will give the probate court equity and concurrent jurisdiction with the circuit court in wills and administration matters, as well in matters of conservatorships and guardianships. And that's when the court has to make a decision appointing someone to make decisions for someone's body, person, or for their financial affairs. Alabama law has, in recent years, has increased the authority of probate judges. One of the things the legislature did this past session was to give probate courts concurrent jurisdiction with circuit courts in elder abuse cases. So we share the same jurisdiction as the circuit courts throughout Alabama whenever there's an issue or case to be decided for abusing elders. And so, and Alabama law also gives, attorneys who are probate judges, their orders have the same effect as circuit court judges. So here in Montgomery County, I am the first attorney that has been a probate judge here since 1975, so almost 50 years. And so I would encourage the strong consideration and support for this amendment. The local amendment 2 would give all the mayors of the counties here in Montgomery County the ability to opt in to the state retirement system. If you want any further information or to read about the amendments for yourself, then I encourage you to go to our website, montgomeryvotesal.gov, or if you haven't gotten it, to go and download our mobile app, which you can find at the Google Play or App Store by simply typing in Montgomery County Probate Court.